the interesting question is, so how much are jobs really replaced now, and how much you increase productivity, but you need the people then at a different place. And building systems that understand that can perceive that is super fascinating for me. When I look at the current technology, I just don't see it. I do agree that at some point, so once we're there, so like I said, I have hard times believing we are there, but once we're there, I also don't know how we identify it. Yeah, you're right. I don't think we're building self-awareness quite yet, but I think we're building the first step towards self-awareness.
Welcome, dear strategists, and welcome again, dear Dr. Björn Hoffmeister.
It's a great pleasure being here. Thanks for having me here.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. And since we last spoke, you moved on in the world of tech giants from then Amazon Alexa to now Waymo. And that is very fascinating, as I think this is one of the most, once again, we said Frontlinien-Forscher, frontline researcher, referring to you because you are very much looking into real life interaction of, in your case, cars, but we will also come to the topics of robotics. We will talk about battle robo-soldiers, for example, and also future possible workplace or workforce disruptions in the future. So please tell us a little, what have you been up to in the last year since we spoke last for a longer time, and yeah, what is your pioneering work in the regards of real life world interaction doing at the moment?
Yeah, I had the fortunate opportunity to join Waymo, to move there, and the topic that interests me is the bleeding edge technology and applied to the real world, the interaction with the real world. And Alexa was the first taste of it because, well, you interact with it, it interacts with the real world, but very limited, right? So it has only the microphone and the speaker. So cars are a whole different ball game, and it is just super fascinating, super fun to build an autonomous system that interacts with the real world with all the weird behavior. Nobody is. People are not always following exactly the rules, and some of the rules are really odd. And building systems that understand that can perceive that is super fascinating for me. And so what I'm doing there, I'm working on the perception system. So that is the system that takes all the sensors that the car has on it and builds, if you want, an internal model and an understanding of the world surrounding the car, combining cameras, combining laser scanners, combining radars. So yeah, that is my job, and that's it's very fascinating.
How many sensors do you have in one car combined, and how can we how can we think about when it is basically then your job to bring that all together in, like, basically making a car not self-aware but aware of a 3D interaction with can be quite messy sometimes, even if we're
Yes,
talking
yes,
about constricted space of the car, of the road.
yeah. The You're right. I don't think we're building self-awareness quite yet, but I think we're building the first step towards self-awareness. So a representation of the surrounding world. How many sensors do we have? Let me recount. I think right now we're using 14 cameras. Um, we use 5 laser scanners and we use 6 radars, if I'm not mistaken. So we have even more cameras on board, and we're experimenting with which one we really need. But they're covering 360 everything. They're covering for long range, and then you need another suite of sensors for the close range.
Hmm.
And yeah, my job is to bring them into um, a, a shared representation. And I think what you can imagine is the same models, the same type of models that are powering the LLMs today,
Mhm.
using similar architectures for those to mm, encode what the sensors perceive. So they put it in some internal representation that reflects kind of a meaning, what it is around and where it is. And then we project all these different sensors in a shared space.
Mhm.
And it's typically, I do this because it's typically a top down space. So for a car, that's most important to know. So what is in front, how far it is, and the side, and so on. Right. So we build a shared 3D space, or it's perhaps a 2.5D space.
Mhm.
And that is what we learn, and it captures what is around, what is there, where it is, and then provide that to the, if you wish, higher level components, then do the reasoning and planning on top of that representation.
That must be quite fascinating to basically layer this over each other because, of course, we all know some memes where a guy wears a stop sign t shirt, for example, and the car stops. We have somewhere there is something resembling like regarding traffic sign with 100, and hopefully the car does not to take up to that, for example. Yeah, not to focus on the little incident with the cats. I mean, how many human controls regarding incidents do we have on occasion? But yeah, I'm really glad that you also already said we are not yet at the self awareness level, and as you also elaborated in part one of our talks, that you still don't quite comprehend actually how, especially the LLMs, are thinking to a regarding degree. So where will we maybe see, or where are you in the regarding of percentage of autonomous driving at the moment when we compare it, for example? I think I saw some numbers. If we take, of course, your results are quite remarkable, but when we take it against, for example, all the mileage driven by US citizens per year, and then compared to incidents and everything, it's still not really in that ballpark of comparison exactly. So I think you mentioned that basically like these final percents of solution it of solving the issue are basically the most intensive.
Yeah, that's very true. So I think when we look at the statistics, where we drive, we are on average safer than a human driver.
Mhm.
So that's what the statistics tell us. Um, I would think that is also true as a general statement. When you look deeper into the statistics, and this is now not sharing anything internal here, so I'm referring here to published papers. Um, they say also that autonomous cars, on average, they do better in certain situations, and they do also worse in other situations. And the cat is a very unfortunate situation where it shows so no autonomous system is perfect yet,
Yes.
unfortunately. Um, the um, the challenges for us are now, we're driving so many miles that the standard situations, they're not a big deal. It's all about the non-standard situations, and the more you get into the long tail,
Mm-hmm.
and that is very complicated because it turns out the long tail is very long. There's a lot of very interesting, complex situations that we have to deal with, and that is also then where the challenges, the most challenges for for me, my team are in, and the more miles we drive, the better we have to get. So we will continue to push the bleeding edge here. Here's another interesting observation with all of that. You can also see that Waymo is not just driving everywhere, and the reason is that we still are very careful in testing out regions. we collect a lot of information. A lot is relying on good mapping, so we understand where what is, so we can react in the right way. And here's a funny, I think, I would say the little trick how to make things work. Because there are just areas, they are very complicated. There's, for example, there's very complicated crossings. There's not, you know, two crossroads, but many crossroads and complicated things. So how do we deal with them? Well, the trick is not to deal with them at all. We call them a disengaged zone, and we just avoid them. So, so that is that is some stuff how we work around those things. And over time, I guess we get better, and then we solve them.
Yeah, I mean, it has also been shown, for example, if you always drive right, for example, you save time. So if you just avoid some intersections, yeah, I can think myself of some I'm disengaging myself from. For example, when we talk about a combination of roundabout with traffic lights and pedestrian crossings, no, thank you. And maybe even throw in a tram for good measure or something like that. That is, I can imagine. Yeah, so but especially regarding the, in your case, disengage, in other aspects maybe like human takeover necessary when we transition from here, from real life world interaction to the topic of robots. We recently saw the Neo robot being presented quite flamboyantly, which is basically designed as a little household helper for, I think, the cheap price of 40K or something like that. But yeah, how to say, it is supposed to help you with chores, but then we saw in the regarding presentation on a great event, the barkeeper even prepared the drink and gave it even to the robot just to shake it, and even that was fumbled. So, and then quite soon it also came out that, yeah, for like most of the things, you still rather should schedule a regarding appointment, where a regarding remote control takeover is being undertaken by whom knows who is now, yeah, sharing your living space with you. And please don't leave children and pets with them alone. So we see that, for example, the Boston Dynamic robots, they can be quite acrobatic, but when we think that in your area a set of interaction, you still have a like somewhat constrained place, and also who no one who is like basically trying actively to act against you. So where do you see the regarding real life interactions of robots or robo soldiers or potentials for that in the, like, say, next 5 to 10 years or so?
Yeah, that's also a very interesting thing, and I think this household robot is already a very telling story, because it turns out this kind of very fine control that is super hard. So it's hard to imagine that we're there anytime soon, and in the environment we're interacting in, it's just very complex, and it's hard to teach that. Um, and yeah, we're seeing that with a car. So if a car has, I think you can argue, but it's not to find the controls you need. So I think solving it there, like with the real world, is already a good challenge that takes us forward. Now, there's also, and I think the other interesting thing is, so you mentioned some adversarial attacks against our car. So, I mean, just drawing this kind of
Yeah.
street sign on the shirt. So, people test out the Waymos, so they really try to mess with them. So we have some of that. But the when it comes to Robo-soldier, I think there are just, to me, perhaps two or three big differences that make me believe it will take a long while before we see anything like autonomy there. So the one thing is, what is here an adversarial attack, if you wish, kind of messing a little bit with it. Okay, yeah, we can deal with that. Um, but on a battlefield, I mean, that's perhaps the first thing you want to do, and it's really hard to harden the systems against that. Um, then the second thing is, I mentioned the trick we're doing, disengage zones. I mean, this just doesn't exist on the battlefield. So you have to be ready for everything there. And then, yeah, the fine control, I mentioned that also. So the environment you interact in. Um, driving on streets and getting to all the terrain, or that's still a different ball game. So so full autonomy in that space, it's hard for me to believe. Um, Human aided collaborative approaches, specific tasks, so all that I think I can imagine, and think that is how it will iterate from there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it that when we're talking about flying drones in like some shared undertakings in the past, that is one thing. Getting that to navigate, getting that to identify certain targets and everything, that is one thing. But when you're on the ground and have to interact with such a multitude of objects and especially also tactical situations at the same time. And yeah, I mean, not even speaking about the US Marine Corps who failed the fooled the one robot by just going onto a cardboard box and moving quite slowly. I think we're past that by now. But yeah, I'm just not thinking that it will be replacing like the common squad leader or its individual soldiers quite soon. But where I really see, and before we later come to the regarding question where will we come to AGI, might we come to AGI, and might it be a bubble and everything. Regarding that, I also already would like to say I don't think so to some extent, because when we talk about, for example, battle management AIs, when we talking about combined arms warfare, now in the combination with thousands, hundreds of thousands of drones and everything, I think that especially battle management AIs are really worth the strategic investment several countries are undertaking right now, because I have, yeah, seen that in several occasions where basically, okay, we get a regarding notification, there has been decided, there we had contact, there was an air defense system deployed and everything. Yeah, you need a staff of hundreds of people, and still something might get lost. Keep that updated, get it relayed, get a real life awareness to the troops on the ground. I think with all these sensory inputs and sorting that and keeping the battle maps actual AI would be a great um, support and yeah, force multiplier to some extent. Not even speaking of the regarding cyber attack support or something like that.
Yeah, that's very true. I do believe in that direction. I think that is where I can see a lot of value, and I think where we see that the systems are good at helping it, and where humans are not good at, is fusing a lot of information. And I think it even starts in the now relatively small scale on the car. So just fusing all the sensors. It's pretty amazing. It's like it's in so far already superhuman because we have a true 360 view,
Mm.
and the car has that awareness permanently. Um, it would be already really hard for a human to merge all that information, and then you go for more sensors, more drones. You have more information from different places, so I can absolutely see how that can help. And again, as a human aided, there's another interesting thing. What we are doing is when so we're building maps, so we know what where something is. And one thing we're doing is just if our car drove the same street multiple times, or multiple cars drove the street, we can combine that information into a better map of that area. So that kind of a fusion, that is where the systems are powerful and can help, and then can provide combined information, distilled information, uh, to a human operator to help to inform decisions.
Try that. Try to reproduce that with a human. I mean, we all in basic training got our sketches courses where we basically have to note down, okay, I have seen that and there's this and that, but yeah, not in LiDAR. I have quality definitely, and you have to train that, otherwise you are not good at that. So, regarding AGI, where do you think are we currently standing on that? Especially, of course, Miss Dr. Sabine Hossenfelder, for example, is quite a critical academic and very likable, I think, and also how to say uh, s- um, in the spirit of educating people. But a while ago, she said she doesn't believe in it, and now recently she came up with, I think it might even take place without anyone noticing because we might be looking for the wrong signs, even maybe.
Yeah, that's another really good and obviously very interesting question. Now it's a bit more philosophical than the previous questions. Um, the at a um, I agree with that sentiment. When I look at the current technology, I just don't see it. So I mean, I don't see the signs. All the analysis I'm seeing is that there is nothing like true intelligence in the human sense, true self awareness. I think all the papers I'm reading about it is telling that effectively how the systems work. It's very still a very simple um, associative system that happens internally. In the sum, it's super powerful and resembles from the outside something that looks like intelligence. But so far, I've not seen any signs that it's there. Um, I I have hard times believing that the technology we have today will enable that. There's one of my key observations is that right now, truly self-learning systems like the car, drive around, see something, use that to update knowledge. That doesn't exist in any automated self-learning way. So there's so much human interactions involved in before a system cannot do that. I just have hard times believing that we're there. Um, the Now when I say hard times believing that we're there, that takes me to your second point. I don't know, and I'm not aware of that. There's even a definition of self-awareness of uh, what we would consider human intelligence there. So um, I do agree that at some point, so once we're there, so like I said, I have hard times believing we are there, but once we're there, I also don't know how we identify it. So we might cross that and nobody notices it. So I also believe in that. So that's another really interesting aspect.
So, like the glass is half full, this is half reassuring and half terrifying.
It's it's true. It's true. Yeah. No, that's a really interesting aspect, and I think that is something where we need more research to understand from both. So what actually defines consciousness? What defines self awareness? Um, and how we can identify that. So I think the good old Turing test that we always believed will tell us that. So you interact with a system and you cannot distinguish that from a human. So it turns out that today's systems can do that, and we're pretty sure they're not intelligent, they're not conscious, they're not self-aware yet. So
Yeah,
we need to there.
yeah, we'll circle back to the awareness to some degree later again, and regarding the that it might be seeming like a human is talking, mostly probably comes from that it's humans feeding that thing, so it possibly reacts regardingly or answers regardingly. Um, Now we have so many massive investments into AI, and especially like have so many postings and companies coming up with, hey, it's got now AI in it, and very many companies do it rather poorly. So of course many people are now saying, are we seeing a new bubble effect? I would beforehand say from my side, I think it's like the typical, how to say, yeah, regarding novelty effect, where basically everyone tries to implement. Many people do it quite okay, some more do it quite poorly, and basically rather don't have the knowledge or just use it at the wrong places. I think it will just basically, as always, boil down to consolidation of the, yeah, most practical and most advanced suppliers in the future.
Yeah, I think that's it's super interesting, exciting, sometimes worrisome to follow that development, particularly from my perspective. right now, having been part of developing some of those systems directly at Amazon, competing there, and deciding that Waymo is one of the really interesting ways to combine um, developing bleeding edge AI and putting it into a robot, if you wish, into an embodied system. So being in the midst of it and watching it is very interesting. Um, Here are a few observations from my end. So I think you're very right about the consolidation that's happening. Um, the question whether we're in a bubble or not, I think we will only realize it in hindsight. But what I think is it's not only a bubble. Is the magnitude a bubble? We'll see. But the direction, I think it's powerful and it will change things. Um, I think what it will not happen, it will not change it that we have something fully autonomous. I think Waymo is perhaps more one of the exceptions
Mm,
there. Um, but mostly, we will see that it's going to aid the human. It's a productivity tool of
mm,
ways. And um, when I read successful applications, I think there was a very interesting blog by Amazon AWS recently,
mhm,
and in their internal study, what they saw is that uh, they have the AI write code,
mhm,
but they're not just using the code. They don't let the AI write the code and that's it. Uh, the software developers still review the code line by line
mm,
and check that. Um, but still, and change them as needed. So, but still, that increases the productivity a lot, so much a lot that now a new bottleneck came up because when you want to check in the code, you have to run all the tests and make sure that all the code changes are compatible. So now you shift your bottleneck from writing the code to deploying the code. So there is in the end there's no magic, but
mm,
the overall productivity still goes up in that aided system. And now, of course, you can think about how you use AI to um, accelerate the check-in progress. So that I think it's how we will see it goes, much more as a tool, um, which increases productivity, and we can talk about what that means for jobs at
yeah,
some point. But the other thing is also what I'm observing, what is very interesting. There's a consolidation that's happening. Developing these huge models is very expensive
mm,
in all fronts. Um, and there's only so much capital that can invest there, and so many experts that have the practical knowledge to make it work. So I think we start to see this consolidation. We start to see the consolidation, a few companies being able to do it. And OpenAI, Google with their Gemini, Claude, XAI, and then and with the Chinese companies as well. Um, but that's that seems to be already it.
mm,
And I see others are perhaps smartly moving out of it. Apple most recently gave up on their centralized AI organization and made AI, dissolved that organization and distributed it over basically their product departments.
yeah,
So they make AI as part of the product. They're not trying to build it themselves anymore. They're going to use it. And honestly, I think that might be one of the smartest moves because that fierce competition in building, but the money is made through a product, and whoever has a product to make money can even have in the end perhaps the bigger margin. So I
indeed.
think Apple is on a good track.
Very much indeed. Yeah, it's quite a great example, and yes, I'm with you. That is very a smart move because they just realize, okay, we can't catch up on this, and mostly we are still a product manufacturer, and yeah, we will see how it will be going for them in the regarding future. And what you said about boosting productivity, yes, very much indeed. I think to remember from our first interview that you narrowed it down quite finely by saying what is, how did you say it, non repetitive work most likely
Mm.
won't be subsidized or replaced by AI to any extent in the foreseeable future. So, and what I also thought really interesting, what you just said, that basically, yeah, the bottleneck shifted. So one could still say that to some extent, yeah, maybe you have less people writing the code, but okay, you have just become more productive, but you still need like maybe still one third of the people, of the programmers you replaced, now retrained on that new bottleneck or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's, I think, very true. I think that is the idea that it's just replacing something, and well, let me say it like this. So whenever you replace something, a new bottleneck surfaces. So there's always a weakest link in the system. So yeah, I think it's and that is, I think, the interesting question is, so how much are jobs really replaced now, and how much you increase productivity, but you need the people then at a different place. Perhaps you need a bit of a different skill set, though.
Mm,
Um, and then in that world, you can still keep a lot of the people that just doing other work, and the overall productivity goes up. And I believe we will see that in many places. To me, one of the things is customer service.
mm.
I would love to have a smart chat bot that just deals with the standard stuff. That is not a problem. But then have a human who can really spend the time with me without waiting time to
Yes.
resolve the issues.
Yeah, I think really hope that you keep me updated in the regarding upcoming of AI agent. I will cut it example from Boris Darkov in where basically he lets his AI assistant call the AI assistant offer regarding hotel, and then basically they just, hey, shall we switch to binary and make this quick? And yeah, once they reach the human, then they can connect us with them. That would be nice. The and once again coming to the regarding how to say transitional problems, what we at the moment I think run into is the problem that the systems make decisions about a status or something, and then you have a hard time reaching a human who can actually reverse that. So come see. Still. But to summarize, I think what you also mentioned was basically we won't be very soon, for example, replacing the landscapers, the construction workers, and everything. I mean, especially when we look how terrifying that might be when a robot with a chainsaw or whatever might be running around and going rogue. But so yeah, you see some of them cleaning and everything, but it's also, yeah, if it's like always the same place and they can wipe down the whole room, maybe yes. But yeah, outside of the factory where you basically have to, yeah, just lever one tool on a regarding on a workpiece or something or hand it over, maybe. But the moment you have to restock the machinery, the moment you have to take care of the machinery and everything. So I recently heard of a company, for example, that in Germany had like hundreds of workers and then basically did something very much automated in Poland. And now they said they have like only 20 people overseeing the whole facility all the time. And I'm saying, like, that might be the plan, but I'm double that.
Yeah, yeah, but it's very interesting. So it's true. So I believe it will stay controlled environments. So it's a factory, the layout you can control, you can design so that it's good for robots, and that's happening. So that's good. You move to some humanoid robots with more awareness, so they can operate more freely.
Mm,
But it's still a relatively restricted environment.
yes.
With Waymo, we're doing the same thing. I mean, streets are by all means very regulated environments. I mean, they're crazy enough, so the complexity enough. But it is where you think about household robots. That is why I cannot believe in them, because every house looks different, and the challenges to navigate and operate there are so big. So I would think that is one of the last things that we are successful in replacing. I think it's, yeah, I have hard times believing that will come anytime soon, and that is the most promising direction right now.
We summarize non-repetitive, not how to say sterile, clearly defined environment. Anything regarding fine motor skills should be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And as we still don't have to expect AGI coming around in like the next 5 years, for example, also the people capable of creative work are still somewhat safe. For example, the synergizers, or how would we call it in the English speaking world
Mm-hmm.
best. So, um, I think still, okay, we established it might not be coming too soon. But I think what to once again get into the philosophical areas, as we basically already wrapped up much of the workplace and work market so far, would be when we have Mr. Harari with his 21 wisdoms for the 21st century. He very much often gets into the topic of ethics, so basically laying out that in the future the major AI companies might have highly paid ethic experts on their regarding boards. So now let's go once again into the Fork experiment or into sci-fi. We have a regarding AGI achieved, and for example, when we now take that Mr. Altman led his security chief, and as I think you said, even having the original idea or being a
Mm-hmm.
very important developer, letting go. Where would we do you see any places for that? Because if I would have to speculate, I would say we always like to talk to experts, and many people like to surround them with experts, especially on the websites and everything. But when it comes to actually listening to them, especially when it's about policymakers and also maybe the one or other military professional, I think that is always more often like one would rather wish for consent than getting, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I developed a non-violent solution, or hey, I found a possibility to house and feed all these people. So, what are your thoughts on this? Might we even want actual AGI? And maybe at the moment we don't see any restrictions, especially on cyber warfare and everything, but maybe the regulation for all that might become quite speedy the moment that it's on the doorstep, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's an. Let me start with the first point. So,
Yes.
ethic professionals in companies. Um, I have hard times believing that. I think that companies, how they operate, and perhaps also what them, I mean, what mostly their job is to develop products, and they improve the products, and the ethics components come, I believe, mostly in by understanding what is acceptable by people. So, I mean, Waymo, for example, does a lot of outreach um, in order to make self-driving cars an acceptable thing in a community.
Yeah.
So, but it's not so much driven of an abstract ethics point. It's driven by building a successful product, and I think that is what drives companies. And I look at OpenAI, and yeah, Ilya left because of uh, well, at least partially because of worries about the safety, and Sam was pushing more forward to say focus more on the product side.
Naturally.
So um, that's I think that's another, I guess, example of that. Now we also see what happened right now. OpenAI has a code red because they're feeling they're falling behind Gemini. So I think, but now it's all about get better
Yeah.
ethics.
Yeah.
Um, so
I already said so. Mr. Harari writes interesting things, but oh yeah, I think the how does Perun always put it, and we could translate that to corporate thinking right now. When we are faced with regime stability, military practicability, the people will always know what the leaders choose, and we very much can translate that to regarding economic means. I think, especially when you're the CEO of a company.
yeah,
Circling back to the regarding question, so where do you think the moment someone says, hey, we might actually have an AGI, some people might very interested in pushing regulations quite fastly suddenly,
Yeah, no,
quite
that's
quickly.
yeah. Here it becomes another very philosophical question. So even if you would have it, I have hard times believing that uh, leaders of the population would be any ready for it. I think it would take a long while to build trust, and I think as a human, we would always want to use AI as a tool in the end. So have our decisions, humans being there. So I would think that is where it's uh, going, and you know, I myself very curious about politicians and how they will create policies to steer that development.
Hopefully, still someone will read through all the fine print in that moment. That's in one hand, and to um, row back with like 2 points for that example. Let me catch my fork once again. Once I have one ethical question regarding Waymo safety development, but on the other hand, regarding not they might not trust the AI. We, on the other hand, see at the moment that so many people, including entrepreneurs, using it as their personal therapist. We have the abominable, sorry to all regarding professionals, rise of AI girlfriends and even robots linked with that. And I hope we backpedal on that fastly. And yeah, we even recently got the commander of the South Korean theater of the US Army stating, yeah, of course, I take it to have strategies and personal decisions made. And I'm like, yep, good that it is an American company because otherwise, upset. So so
True.
much for that. And regarding Waymo and security ethics in the future, what has often been brought up, and I hope you have been confronted with this quite at least some a few times so far. I mean, driver protection or pedestrian protection, or
Oh
the
yeah.
driver protection, for example. So
Um, yeah, that is. Let me say it with that. I think two things about that. It's a very interesting ethical question that Waymo has to answer.
mm,
That are decisions I'm not involved in.
mhm,
I'm happy about not being involved in because those are uh, not decisions how to design a system. Uh, in practice, the interesting thing is, because in practice, we hardly ever observe such a dilemma. So I think we see there is kind of a more obvious thing to do, and um, the what Waymo has is a huge department that is only looking at safety,
mm,
at all the things that could happen, and analyzing them and assigning them risk levels. And well, that's the department that is taking care of that. Um, so I think it's a very interesting theoretical thing, and it's good to think it through. I think from a practical point of view, it is not as relevant, I would think.
mm,
Um, but I think the other thing is really telling is how much you need to invest in testing system, uh, analyzing, understanding system, or if you don't understand the system, at least you need to be able to understand the outcome and the impact of
mm.
the system that you're building. And at Waymo, we are forced to do that because if we fail, it's very physical what happens. So that's really bad. Um, Perhaps unfortunately for the LLMs and what you described how they're being used, that impact is not as clear, that is not as obvious. But it could be as bad indeed. and then blindly trusting it, I think that can have very unwelcome consequences.
Yeah, very much indeed. We even see the first psychiatrists by now getting onto the topic that you indeed have AI induced psychosis on the rise, for example, because it's always agreeing with you. And yes, it is a brilliant idea. And yes, you have to finally solve the unified theory. And yes.
Hmm.
So you see, and you know me, I always want to look at any if that might come up, and so that might have been a very
Hmm.
interesting concern, but I totally get it. And yeah, we uh, it's always good when such things is not of one's immediate responsibility, because it is quite hard. And yeah, so that was once again a very interesting philosophy session with you. Thank you very much. You keep us updated, and next year again, the latest.
Um, I, Thanks for having me here. I would
Always.
be very happy to report again in a year or so from now, and I'm very curious myself to see how the field has progressed.
We keep each other updated. Stay aware. Take care.
To take care.